How's it going, everybody? Abyssal Tech here, and I am back with review of the Grim Reaper's Battleship Brawl. So, this is a bit of a new one for them to do. So, in their very first battle, they had no clue what they were doing. They had no idea of naval tactics. They had no idea how anything about battleships, which is kind of what inspired me to start this series. And as they went on, they realized they learned an awful lot. So they decided to redo their first battle. In the first fight, Cap decided to virtually stand on the prow of South Dakota, possessed with all the zeal and fury of the Imperial Commissariat, and shout, "Drive me closer! I want to hit them with my sword." This was a very poor tactical move, and South Dakota paid for that. Where at a closer range, at that very close range, Ise's larger number of guns and very large secondary battery kind of put at the end to South Dakota. So, anyway, let's talk about the ships a little bit first. So here we have the USS South Dakota of the South Dakota class. So she was the first of 4 ships in her class, built with treaty limitations, but with kind of the understanding that a lot of the battleships she was likely to be facing were not going to be complying with the treaty anymore. So anything pretty much her generation and later was going to be treaty non-compliant. So 16-inch guns, excess of 35,000 tons. And she might run aground here. I don't know. Anyway, as you can see from the superstructure, she's a rather cramped ship. Trying to cram all that firepower and all the armor they needed onto her meant she was rather short. Like, you compare it, South Dakota to Iowa, apples to oranges right there. Like, you could see similar design. But anyway, we got the 16-inch 45 caliber main guns. These did not fire the super heavy shell that the E50 that was fitted to Iowa. So they could have fired them. It's just their handling system was not designed for that size of shell. So, real quick, let's throw that rudder kind of hard over there for her. Anyway, and get back to who talking about it. So, she's got radar. She's got her secondary battery, 5-inch, 38 caliber weapons. This, while it could be used for anti-surface work, these guns were primarily for anti-air purposes. So, if you see fights where they get into secondary range and the U.S. guns just aren't performing, that's because they're not designed really for that. So, anyway, South Dakota's biggest claim to fame, unfortunately, it was the second naval battle of Guadalcanal, where in a night action, she was fighting. Her and Washington were engaged with the Japanese, and I've seen sources say that it was an engineer, that it was one of the electrical chiefs, but anyway, someone decided that they were smarter than electricity, and in order to fix an electrical fault, they tied a breaker shut. They lock-wired it shut. Just let you guys sit there and digest that. Well, anyone who knows anything about electricity is cringing so hard right now. Alright, so this electrical fault that was tripping the breaker, thing led to a cascading electrical failure that managed to bring down power for pretty much the entire ship. Radar offline, steering offline, main batteries offline, lights offline. And that's when Battleship Kirishima rolled up. Now, I don't know the ranges off the top of my head that Kirishima engaged her at, but despite heavy damage to the superstructure of South Dakota, her main armor handled the 14-inch guns of Kirishima very nicely. Kirishima was just not able to really stick any damage, and before she could really try harder, well, Battleship Washington with Admiral Lee on board rolled around the corner with a steel chair. And that was that. Yeah, nice ship, but let's go to the other one. Battleship Ise. Now, have you ever been to an art gallery or something, or see a sculpture, and you don't know what it is, but you look at it and you're just like, yep, that does it for me right there. And that is Ise to me. Probably my favorite looking out of all the super dreadnought battleships, Other ships have their charm. I'm a huge fan of what the Italians did. But there's just something about Ise. Couldn't tell you what it was, but I like her. Anyway, Ise is despite winning the first round, it's clear going into this that now that everyone knows what they're doing, she's by far the underdog. Much less range, more guns, smaller guns. So he's going to have a harder time getting through to South Dakota, while South Dakota is just going to be punching her lights out left, right, and center. So, real quick, go to the gun penetration tables, and you can see 16-inch 45 at about 30,000 yards, which is where these things start. It's got over 7 inches of deck armor penetration, and I want to say one of these numbers is your belt armor. Not totally sure, but yeah. So about 15 and a half inches of belt armor penetration, whereas the Japanese shell at 30,000 yards has maybe 4 inches, so and can do about 10 inches of armor. So yeah, South Dakota's definitely got the advantage here. Ise is rather unique. Ise and her sister Yuga are rather unique in battleship history because following the Japanese loss of carriers at Midway, they were very short of flying platforms. So Ise and Hyuga in 1943 were brought in, had their aft 2 turrets removed, and a flight deck built over this entire part of the ship. Yeah, it was a battleship carrier hybrid. So, the only 2 times it was ever that design was ever really done. It came up with quite a bit, but no one ever put it into practice until unfortunately for her, well, she's also going to run it around, so steer. She never had the chance to field aircraft in combat. But by the time the conversion work was complete, Japan was running short on both aircraft and pilots. But she would have carried Judy dive bombers and a float plane fighter. I forget what the designation for that one is. So the dive bombers would have had to land off. There wasn't enough deck space for them to land after taking off. So they would have either ditched, landed on a friendly flat top, landed on an enemy flat top and for bonus points, or found a nice land base airfield to put down for the night. Floatplanes obviously could just land alongside and get craned back on board. So, in her new configuration, she was part of the Northern Force for the invasion of the Philippines. And the Northern Force was mainly for distraction. You had Ise Yuga, who didn't deploy with aircraft, as I said, but they did deploy with an awful lot of anti-air guns. Their purpose was to distract U.S. forces and let the center force, which included Nagato, Yamato, and Musashi, to slip in and get at the invasion forces. And it actually almost kind of worked. Halsey's scouting forces spotted Zuikaku in the Northern Force. He got the bit in his teeth and took his entire flank screening force with him, leading to one of the most one-sided defeats in naval history, where the pride of the Imperial Navy got sent packing by some very angry men in some very small boats. Battle of Samar, Taffy 3. Salute you, crazy mad bastards. Yeah, she actually lasted one of the longer out of most Japanese battleships. Pretty much ran supplies and didn't really engage in combat operations, but ran supplies, did escorting, and eventually was just kind of left because they didn't have enough fuel to operate her. Where she was bombed by U.S. Navy forces in harbor in Japan, sunk, and after the war was scrapped. Sad fate. Anyway, let's get back to the battle here.
Hello, valued viewers. I hope you're all doing very well, and welcome back to our 1945 capital. She's very inaccurate.
So, this is some real good examples of ship handling here.
You have not got 12 guns firing.
Yeah, in fact, can I get a further...
Wait, who was driving this one? Let's see. Dirty was driving South Dakota. Ise was being driven by British. So, yeah. They both understood the assignment. South Dakota keeps that range, takes the longer range hitting power of her guns into account, and just punches holes. Ise closes in, so her guns could actually do some work. And for the most part, it was a good idea and decently executed. You can see South Dakota just chews apart the belt armor here, starts flooding several bits. More and more damage. And then Ise reverses the turn to get that undamaged side engaged, which is about the smartest thing he could have done, because by this point there was enough damage to Ise that enough flooding that he couldn't repair anymore, that if he had taken too many more hits on his port side, he would have probably rolled over. So, having Dirty in South Dakota counter flood for him, probably about the smartest thing he could have done. South Dakota managed to let Ise get within secondary range those 8-inch guns can do some work on the kind of unarmored portions of the ship. But like Kirishima before her, Ise just could not get into the meat and potatoes of the ship. So, yep, see. 3 compartments permanently flooded, 2 compartments. And unfortunately, the rudder was also taken out. So, I mean, there wasn't a lot of sharp maneuvering done in this, so you could still steer with engine differential. Just turn some shafts a little faster than the other. But South Dakota, other than taking a pretty decent hit to her shaft and rudder, managed to get it all repaired, and just kept taking it and taking it. But she did take an awful lot of killing. 45 minutes in, and as you can see, she's pretty chewed up, but she hasn't really taken any more significant damage. South Dakota took some good hits there. You can actually see the damage from the one hit to the shafts and. And they start trading some HE shots. I don't think a single one of them landed there. Joking about all the water, them using the flooded compartments for some fish. And finally, the end. It looked like right there both forward magazines cooked off.
It was on the second on the hour. It was by the second on the hour. It just switched to 0-0 and a mag blew. Show me that damage control.
As you can see, the ship is gutted.
She will, yeah, absolutely, guys. Well done, Dirty.
Already is heavily flooding down at the bow.
I mean, what a brilliant fight. Both guys did absolutely perfect. They did the viewers were right. This guy should stay off and he should snipe, and it worked. It was not easy. He had to really work for it. And brilliant captaining by Ise as well.
Yep. Very good fight. You could really see, compared to the first engagement, how much different their overall performance was. Like I said, the tactics evolved from drive me closer, I want to hit them with my sword, to actually managing counter flooding, managing range, all that stuff. So definitely one of their longest and furthest range fights. Normally they just like to these guys really like to get into secondary range, but as you can see, man, it's not always the best idea. Okay. Well, till next time, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm having a lot of fun with these, just because I get to reread all kinds of interesting things about these ships, and I need very minimal excuse to do that. So, all right. Till next time, have a good day.